Welcome back to N's Notebook LM. So, let me start with a question for you. What if your senses, the very tools you use to perceive reality, are lying to you? It kind of sounds like something out of a movie, right? But the truth is, our brains create these powerful illusions all the time. To really get what I mean, let's look at this really chilling event from January 3rd, 2004. On paper, everything about Flash Airlines Flight 604 looked perfect. The pilot, a celebrated war hero with thousands of hours of flight time under his belt. The plane, a brand new, state-of-the-art Boeing 737. But it was taking off from Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, in the dead of night, flying out over the totally featureless, dark Red Sea. Just 2 minutes after taking off, the plane just vanished. And tragically, there were no survivors. Investigators were absolutely stumped. The data recorders, the black boxes, they showed nothing. No engine failure, no explosion, no sign of any malfunction at all. So what on earth could have happened? Well, the answer wasn't in the plane's machinery. It was inside the pilot's own mind. The culprit was this incredibly powerful illusion called spatial disorientation. You see, our brains evolved to navigate on the ground, where gravity always tells us which way is down. It's simple. But when you're in a speeding airplane, all these other forces, like acceleration and centrifugal force, they can totally confuse your inner ear. With no visual cues in the pitch-black darkness, the pilot's brain created this completely convincing but totally false sensation that he was flying straight and level, even as the plane was banking into a deadly spiral. He was a victim of a sensory illusion. Now, that kind of thing is thankfully pretty rare, but our brains create cognitive illusions every single day. And the most common, most powerful one of all is the one that shapes how we see our own future. It's called the optimism bias. It is the reason we all tend to believe we're less likely than the average person to get divorced or get in a car accident or get a scary diagnosis from a doctor. But at the same time, we're totally convinced our own kids will be gifted and our careers are going to be amazing. And this isn't just wishful thinking. It's a fundamental part of how our brains are wired. When a researcher named Tali Sharot asked people to imagine really mundane future events, like a simple ferry ride, they just couldn't help themselves. They pictured these magnificent scenes with perfect weather and their hair blowing in the wind. They literally painted even the most boring gray events in shades of pink. Apparently, this happens because the very same part of our brain we use to remember the past is what we fire up to imagine the future. And it seems like that system has a built-in positive spin, always nudging us toward a rosier version of tomorrow. But why? Why would evolution give us what seems like a totally irrational bias?
Well, it turns out that optimism is a ridiculously powerful engine for progress. The simple belief that you can succeed actually reduces stress and anxiety, and that has real, measurable benefits for our health. But even more important, that belief is what motivates us to get up and try, and to keep going when things get tough. In a way, optimism can literally become a self-fulfilling prophecy, shaping our reality just by changing what we expect to happen. Take this, in 1987, right after the Lakers won the NBA championship, their coach, Pat Riley, did something incredibly bold. He stood up and promised the entire world his team would win again the next year, something no NBA team had managed to do in almost 20 years. His public guarantee created this immense pressure, yeah? But it also created an expectation of success that drove the team to train harder than they ever had before. And guess what? A year later, they made his prediction come true. This bias can also help us reframe even the worst experiences imaginable. Lance Armstrong, a cancer survivor and 7-time Tour de France winner, once said he would actually choose having had cancer over his championships because of what that experience taught him as a person. His optimistic outlook let him find this profound meaning and growth in something that most people would only see as a terrible misfortune. But of course, there's a darker side to all this. Because just like that pilot who tragically trusted his own feelings over his instruments, unchecked optimism can make us dangerously blind to risk. In 1941, Joseph Stalin got multiple, very credible warnings that Hitler was planning a massive invasion. We're talking intelligence from his best spies, and even from President Roosevelt himself. But Stalin was so optimistic that Germany would honor their non-aggression pact that he just dismissed all the evidence as lies and provocations. His optimism bias left his entire country catastrophically unprepared for what was coming. This exact same bias leads to something called the planning fallacy, and there's no better example than the Sydney Opera House. The original plan, a $7 million project, finished in 6 years.
The reality? It ended up taking 16 years and costing $102 million. Now, the planners weren't incompetent. They were just human. They were overly optimistic, underestimating every single possible thing that could go wrong.
So it really all boils down to finding the right balance. As the researchers Puri and Robinson so perfectly put it, optimism is like red wine. A glass a day is good for you, but a whole bottle a day can be pretty hazardous.
So what does all this mean for us in our daily lives? Well, the optimism bias isn't some flaw that we need to cure. It's a core piece of our mental software. It's what fuels us. The real trick is to harness its power without being fooled by its illusions.
Think about it like this. A pilot has to learn to trust the plane's instruments over their own powerful feelings. In the same way, we need to learn to recognize our own bias. We have to know that while our brain is our biggest cheerleader, it might also be causing us to ignore some pretty important warning signs or seriously miscalculate how long and how much effort a project is really going to take. Awareness, that's the instrument that lets us correct our course.
Just knowing that your brain is hardwired for this kind of irrational positivity, that's the first and honestly the most powerful step. So the next question you have to ask yourself is, how are you going to use that knowledge to plan your future? If this topic has captured your interest and you'd like to dive deeper, the book is called The Optimism Bias by Tali Sharot.